I would rather close it down than to sell it to the wrong person, because I felt my customers might think I'd sold out. I don't know what my life would have been like if I hadn't have fallen into natural temptation.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Noongar Wadandi Mort. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Scratch the surface and everyone has a story. Welcome, Kaya, to the wisdom of women.
Today we have with us a lovely lady who sees the value of making mistakes, and learning is a journey that we just keep going on.
Yeah.
For 32 years, she owned and ran a healthy food venue in the south of WA. Welcome, Annie Malone.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was iconic, Annie. I know that I used to go there and buy up the famous natural Temptation burger, and your veggie lasagna was pretty good as well.
Absolutely delicious.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you call us iconic, but maybe we were just lucky to be one of the first ones in Bunbury, I think, at that time, to continue doing that style of food, where we moved out of the health food shop environment, because that's where we started at Good Earth. So we were pretty much had the health orientated people. But then when Centrepoint Shopping Centre was built, the nice leasing agent man who had very nice blue eyes used to come over and order Lebanese rolls, and he was charming, Katrina and myself. We realised later, and so he suggested, why don't we go over to the new shopping centre, which we just didn't want to do at all, because we didn't believe in that whole commercial thing. We weren't really mainstream. We wanted to stay in the hippie confines of the surf health food shop.
I love the way you
where we were.
like that.
Yeah. So that's how we ended up at Centrepoint. And for me especially, it was the start of the journey, I suppose, to be opening myself to a wider audience and possibly being a little bit more professional, even though I thought we did quite well over at the health food shop. But we had a real safety net there. Putting yourself out to the shopping centre was a really steep learning curve. And Katrina and I did it together for a year, but then she really wanted to go back and focus on her naturopath. Okay. And I found it fun, so I decided to go it alone. So that's how I ended up and being the owner of the cafe itself.
And clearly, what a journey. 3 and a bit decades is incredible. Let's go a little bit further back, though, to where all this began. You had the health food shop,
Yeah. Okay, so I was brought up on a dairy farm in Capel. Milking cows and putting hay out during school holidays. We lived out the back of Capel, and I went to school in Bustleton. So when we had to go over to the school bus, we had to walk over five or six paddocks in our rubber boots. So I always used to tell the girls at work how hard done by we were when we were kids. We were brought up tough.
I was going to say, this is starting to sound like my own father used to say, how he walked 10 Ks or 10 miles, in bare feet.
Across the swamp,
Just to get to school. You kids don't know how lucky you've got it.
Yeah. But looking back on it, it was true actually. That's we did have to go to school in rubber boots, and I was the youngest of 5 girls, so luckily I had 4 sisters to learn from along the way, and as we got to a certain height, we progressed to the next push bike. We didn't have to double dink at all. So so I had a brother either end, an older brother and then a younger brother. So
that's a big family.
Yeah, good Catholic family. And we would be up at 5:45 every morning, and we wouldn't get home till about 5:45. So, and then when we got home, we'd have jobs to do because Mum would be again at the dairy. So we had that. We were imbued with that really good work ethic from an early. I think that influenced me quite a lot.
I'm hearing you. Yeah, that was big.
I was of that age group, and we had a lot of surfer type people come down to Capel to live in farmhouses. So there was that alternate lifestyle sort of creeping in by the time I was 17 to 18. So I started getting interested in alternate type foods and, reading different magazines. So I suppose it's a bit of self-education and, the Track Surf magazine, you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, how to make your own muesli and things like that. And I think too, having four older sisters, I was lucky in a way that I could observe how they grew up and did what they did. But being the younger one, I wanted to be a bit different and go and do different things. But I definitely didn't want to get married early and end up with kids. I wanted to sort of go off and travel. And one of my older sisters did travel. She went on a world cruise with one of my aunties, who was a head mistress. So she went off and did the nanny jobs over in England. And so I sort of had a good example that I could follow either way. So with the interest in health food and alternate lifestyle, that's sort of that's the path I ended up following. And I was also doing Iyengar yoga as well. Jim McKenzie, he was one of the very first chiropractors in Bunbury. And my dad used to go, like all the farmers around town used to go to this hippie guy who used to crack your back and everything.
It's really interesting how you talk about chiropractors, because I know my own dad has these great stories about a chiropractor who used to operate out of Perth. And in those days, it was almost like they were considered to be witch doctors.
Well, this is the 70s, so they weren't recognised by any type of medical profession or anything. But a lot of the surfers got into chiropractic because they all had bad backs from surfing, and Jim was a surfer and quite alternate. Anyway, he went over to the States and studied, and then he came back and set himself up in his farmhouse. So we got into Iyengar yoga, and then a friend of mine had been over to Iyengar, who is actually a man, and he's from Pune in India, and Mick was going to go back there and do a 6-week course, and he said, would I like to go? I was only 18, 19 at this stage. And I said, wow, yeah, that sounds really good. And so then I go and say to Mum, I'm going to go to India and to do this yoga course, and then I might travel on to England. And Mum just went, what? Like, are you kidding me? And I went, no, this is what I'm going to do. And it's just, we don't know what we don't know, do we? I was just so naive.
Oh, but how fabulous, though, to be just embarking, off you go on this amazing journey.
And at that stage too, a lot of teenagers were going over to London and, buying a van and travelling around. So I thought, I'll do that. Or they were going on the hippie trail, through Afghanistan. I think they used to call it the happy bus or something. Yeah, Mum was horrified, and
understandably so.
At the time, I just thought, oh, God, get over it. Like everyone's doing it.
Jeez, Mum.
So
take a chill pill.
Your parents are just so old-fashioned, and but looking back, and I just think, like she was very brave to not stop me. Like she could have said, no, you're not doing that. That's too dangerous. But it was such a culture shock. Like when we got to Bombay or Mumbai, as it is now, there was just so many people. And as we left the airport, the guy that I was with, he said, right, get your backpack. And they're all little kids outside. It was about 2:00 in the morning. And he said, right, there's a bus over there. That's where we need to be. When we get to these doors, he said, get your backpack and just run. We were the only white people. So... And, I had jeans and a shirt, and I was just boiling hot.
And did you have your beautiful blonde hair? And
I'm a brunette.
Like brunette.
I'm a brunette. Yeah, this is aging naturally. Yeah, I've always had brown hair. So anyway, we got on the train and we had to go to Pune, which was it was in the hills, and it was about a 2-hour train trip. And it started off, the train was quite empty, and at each stop, all the villagers would get on, and by the time we got to Pune, we had ladies with their babies and chickens in a cage, because they were all taking their stuff to Pune to market. Of course. And we just sort of kept moving over. Oh, you can sit here, and then we had people sitting in front of us, and women were picking the nets out of their kids' hair. But, they're all lovely. Yeah. But they would just sort of look at us, white people, yes, because we were, again, the only white people on that train.
I'm just imagining this, though. Here you come from, like, the green acres of the southwest of Western Australia, and now you're immersed in this another planet.
Yeah. So I was just sort of wide-eyed, and Mick, who had been there before, just said, just keep moving over, they'll be right. And then once we got to the Yoga Institute, we sort of met lots of other travellers, and South Africans and English people, Westerners, and everyone would give you little tales of where they'd been. So anyway, after doing the course, then we went back to Mumbai, and then Mick was coming back to Australia, and I was going to go out to Kashmir because I'd met this Indian man who had a Indian shop in Busselton. Well, he contacted me because he had found out that this girl was going to India, and he suggested, would I like to go to Kashmir, because he had a friend, and he wanted to bring me to bring a little bit of stock back, but in return I could stay at his friend's houseboat. And then he said, and if you get along with him really well, perhaps you could marry him. And then
my Lord.
so that he can come back to Australia, because he really needs to get out of he really wants to get out of India, and he can come and live with me. And he said, don't worry, a lot of Australian girls do it, but then we pay for just a quick divorce. And he said, so you don't have to do anything. And I just said,
What?
I don't think I would be doing that, but I'll go and get some of your stock, and I'll meet your friend, and so I did all that. So I didn't tell my mum any of this, of course. That was a bridge too far. When I got on the plane and I was alone, I just I was just scared, and I suppose I was homesick, really. And I had this Indian couple, it was quite good looking Bollywood type couple next to me, who were kind of kissing and everything, and I just looked at them and I just burst into tears because I just felt so alone.
Yeah.
And I never ever thought that I would feel scared or alone, because I was this bold person that, yes, I'm going to India. So I cried all the way on the plane. I just couldn't stop. And I'd never ever experienced that before. And the nice hostess kept asking me, did I want peanuts? Or she just wanted me to shut up, I think.
But so you're sitting there utter bereft, just
and I didn't
feeling so
understand it,
alone
really.
and isolated.
I didn't understand what was happening. And then when I got to Kashmir and I found where I had to go, and I got on the shikara, and I got directions to the houseboat, and I got on this houseboat, and I don't know whether anyone's been to Kashmir, but they have these beautiful palatial houseboats, and because they sell lovely carpets and everything up there, and a lot of rich Americans and Europeans and that go there to buy the carpets. And anyway, so I went to this family's houseboat, and there was this lovely houseboat in the centre, and then there was this old kind of houseboat that was sinking into the lake a little bit, and I just thought, wow, done all right here if I'm going to stay with this guy's friend, and I'm going to stay on this houseboat. So I introduced myself and who I was, and they said, yes, we knew that you were coming. And then they walked me through the really nice houseboat, out the kitchen door, and then I went on this little bit of an island, and then I went to the little houseboat that was sort of sinking in. I went, right, this is where I've got to stay. So there was a few holes in the wall and everything, and anyway, I set all my stuff there, and then I had another cry, because I just thought, well, I'm here now. Like, what am I going to do? And I had a shower and got all cleaned up, and I think I just sat in my bedroom and crying. Anyway, then another couple who there was another room at the back of the houseboat. I heard someone else come in, so I sort of stopped crying, and after a while, this girl knocked on the door, and this English girl, Jean, came in, and she said, "Oh, are you okay? We just heard you crying." I went, "Oh no!" Like, someone's heard me bawling my eyes out. And so they had just come back from Australia. They'd been hitchhiking around Australia, and they were on their way back to England. He was from Belgium and she was English. And so they sort of took me under their wing, because I told her, I said, I've been doing this yoga thing, and now I'm just travelling by myself, and I was going to go to England, but I'm just too homesick and I don't think I can do it. I'm just scared. I said, I don't want to be by myself. It's just different when you've got a friend, but when you're just on your own, you just feel very vulnerable. So I had discovered something about myself. I had decided, chatting with Jean, and I just said, look, I asked her about, the happy bus and how you get to Afghanistan, England, and I realised I'm not bold enough at this stage. I'm just far too homesick. And So I thought, no, I've been away for 6 weeks. I'm going to have another 2 weeks here, and I want to go home. So I went to the bank the next day, and they wired the money across. And of course, it took a week or so for me to organise my flight and to get the money across. Meanwhile, they sort of looked after me in Trinagar, and then I met the man that I was supposed to want to help out. Yeah, the son of the man who owned the houseboat, and he was lovely, but they were all on antidepressants. I think they used to take Mandrax and things like that. So because they're all just wanting to get out of where they were, they wanted to come to a Western country, and so I just sort of said to him, "Look, I'm not going to marry you, so don't get excited about you coming back to Australia with me." So I was smart enough to actually tell him up front, but he just thought, oh, well, So he took me for a few little rides in his nice Shikara, and I just said, look, it's just not going to happen. But while I was there, I actually met a few Australian girls who had actually fallen in love with Indian, real hipster sort of Indian guys, and they were taking them back. But I just thought, no, that's not me.
Yeah,
So
how interesting.
So I was quite happy then to stay in the old cheap houseboat because, I wasn't putting anyone out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
beholden.
So when I came back to Australia, as soon as I got home, being so homesick, and then as soon as I got home, I was fine. Yeah. And I just thought, why did I come back? But I thought, well, I really had to come back because I was homesick. But then when you're home and amongst all your family, and also things that are familiar, like, to walk down the street and not have people like salesmen shout out to you and chase you and want to sell, that pressure of that whole culture. And I thought, it was a bit of culture shock. So I was home for about a month, and I just thought, I've still got itchy feet, and I had saved enough money that I was intending to stay away for 6 months. So I decided to travel around Australia. So I was only home for about 4 weeks, and then I met this guy, and he was from Tasmania, because I started going back, just doing some barmaid work at the Parade Hotel where I used to. That was my second job before to save money. So I did some part-time work there and met this guy, and then he was just a real dreamer, and I think that's what attracted me to him. And I was telling him about going to India, but, now I want to do something else. And he said, oh, we should buy a combi and go around Australia. So we did. And
that is a dream.
So
buy the convoy and, convoy and off you go.
Yeah. So I thought I said, oh, look, Mum and Dad wouldn't like me just sort of going off around Australia in an old bomb. So I think we should buy a good combi. So because I still had some money, we bought a good combi. So then I went and told Mum and Dad, oh, well, actually, I've met this guy, and I'm going to travel around Australia. So that was another oh, no, what do you know about him? And I just said, oh, Mum, you don't have to, I know his last name and stuff, so...
Another example of parents just being such drags, hey?
Well, I just think what I put my mum and dad through. And I remember years later when I was in my mid-20s saying to Dad, we were talking about growing up, and, when I was 16, 17, I didn't like that period of my life much because I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because the sister above me, Jenny, she had gone to teachers training college, but I didn't want to go to uni. I knew I wanted to do something, but everything that I said, oh, maybe I should do, I was going to do fashion design, and Mum said, oh, or you'd only just met, and I went, oh yeah, maybe I did just. But I always felt that I was sort of, you've got your parents' moral conscience in the back of your mind and I thought, well, that's why I made sure that we bought a respectable combi van so that it wasn't going to break down. So
Excellent.
So I travelled around Australia for 2 years and lived on the Gold Coast for a year, just doing restaurant cafe work, and had a really good job with an English couple on the Gold Coast. So that would have been 1978, and they really looked after me as well. So I was really lucky wherever I went. I did have people that looked after me. And then the last 6 months, then we did a bit of fruit picking, and then the last 6 months we went down to Tasmania and lived with Greg, the boyfriend. He lived with his parents, and I got a job in the hotel there. But we left the Gold Coast, beautiful in winter. It's like 20, 22 degrees, and we ended up going from a summer in the Gold Coast to a winter in Tasmania. It's just, I spent August, the roaring 40s coming out. It was just so cold. By the time, and all the Tasmanians kept saying, oh, you should wait for summer, that one day that we have is just fantastic, but I really wanted to wait for summer in Tasmania, but I was just getting really homesick by that stage, been away for 2 years, and I just, I flew home. And and I was just so white. I remember my sisters were on a basketball camp when I got home, and of course they all said, "Oh, come on down to Busselton. We've got a basketball camp. You can play in the team and everything." Because we all the four of us sisters used to form a team, and when I put my shorts on, they just all rolled around laughing. They just said, "Oh, like you are just like blue." And I said, "Well, I have been in Tasmania for the last 6 weeks, so
still thawing out."
Yeah, so I thought, well, it's good to be home around your sisters that make fun of you, and so I came home and I worked at the ag department because before I started travelling, I'd worked at Capel Dairy and did my cream testing tickets, and so I sort of worked in the lab. And then I got a job working at the ag department in Bunbury. And then I got married, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is what happens now. But I didn't end up getting pregnant, and somehow along the way I got divorced. And, you're still searching for something of what you want to do. So I was doing an art course, textiles and everything. And then I met Katrina. Well, I had a little clothing shop. And through that, I met Katrina, who was running the kitchen on the Victoria Street when Jerry had the Good Earth on Victoria Street.
In the 80s?
In the 80s.
That's when I used to visit and go and get the carob buds. And my first taste of
so it would have been about 82, I think. I had I bought a little sort of Indian clothing shop called Karma Villa. Bought that off Lauren Ashton back in the 80s, and I ran that for a little while. And I was doing screen printing and things like that.
Where was that?
It was underneath the ABC. The ABC used to be on the corner of Spencer and Stirling Street, and there was just a tiny little shop. Yeah, so I bought that off Lauren.
And so how did it all then merge into...
Well, Katrina used to come in all the time and buy clothing, and she sort of got chatting, and I used to go down there, and we sort of became friends. And then I broke my arm for a horse riding accident, and I couldn't drive. And I was at the shop one day with my arm in a plaster and everything, and Katrina said, "Oh, well, you must stay at my house." And I thought, "Oh, you're a customer, but I don't know you that well." But she obviously felt that we were friends, and she had a house in the Tree Street area. And I ended up staying there because I was married at this time still. And, so through that became friends with Katrina. And then I think we were both going to do a little health food stall at one of the markets in town. And the girl had double booked. Katrina was doing it, and I was also doing it with my sister. And then because we were both doing it, we ended up saying, "Oh, well, we'll all do it together." So I sort of got to know her through that. But then the Prancing Pony restaurant, which was on Spencer Street, which the Orange people ran, Neris Pershon ran. Katrina was very good friends with them. That was coming up for sale, and she was saying that she would like to buy it, but she didn't. She was happy with the cooking side of it, but she wasn't happy with running the business side. So she said, "Oh, would I like to go into it with her?" And I just said, "Oh yeah," and so we did. So anyway, we ended up after 2 years, we got out of that, and that's when Jerry was moving to Wellington Street, and he didn't want to run the cafe there. He just said, "Look, if you guys run the cafe." Or the lunch bar, really what it was. So when we first moved over to Centrepoint, we basically set up all the cafe ourselves because Katrina, like I learned a lot from Katrina because she'd been in the health food industry running a cafe up in Perth sort of before she came down to Bunbury with Jerry. And so she had a lot of experience about what would work and what didn't. So I really followed her lead quite a lot. And then we thought, in the 2 years' time when we sell it, whoever buys it can do whatever they want. So that's why we had a different name to what the cafe was at Good Earth because we thought we'd still be running the two. And so, we would just get a heap of recipe books and then work out what would display well and what would keep well in a bain-marie because it's not like you're doing fast order. People order something, you go and cook it. At that stage, we had to make everything and then put it in a bain-marie. So that's why everything ended up with cheese on top because it didn't dry out. Yeah. And if we did do a stir fry or something, that had to be done just at lunchtime so it went out. So we had a few things that were dairy-free. But
what about the cookbook?
That's further down the track.
Yeah.
So that's how we devised our recipes, and it was we used to have the Hunza pie, which had the pumpkin and potato on the top. So that one was dairy free. We sort of started incorporating tuna at that stage because we thought, that's a cold water fish, so that's from a health perspective, that's beneficial. So Katrina said, we'll do tuna, but we definitely weren't going to do anything with chicken, because there's hormones and things like that. So we said, our compromise at Centrepoint was tuna. So we did the tuna croquettes.
Yeah. They were a staple for my kids growing up.
Yeah, and they were just, they were
so good.
Yeah, we used to sell a lot more of them in the end than we did the veggie patties. So I had my little domain then that I thought was really fun. Yeah. And so that's how we ended up splitting up the two shops, and she was really happy to go back to with Jerry at Good Earth. So that's sort of how the book started, because one day we were getting quite a few different salads, and Donna said, "Oh, we should write a cookbook," and I just went, "Oh yeah, right." And she said, "Well, I'm doing an English doctorate. I think I would be quite good at it." And I said, "Really?" I said, "You serious?" So we sort of started putting all our recipe, like writing them down properly. And just through kitchen chat it was. And I said, "Well, if you want to start collating everything and we'll get a bit of a theme, you can then take time off and do book collating."
So how long? I want to go back to the book because I loved the book, and I bought a copy and I got a couple more for various family and friends. How long did it take to get that together? And it's a bit of an iconic thing as well of your business was the extension with the cookbooks.
Yeah. So it was probably about 9 months, I'd say, because we decided to self-publish because we went down a few paths of, going to Fremantle Press and different things. And we just thought, well, if I had the money to fund it, why don't we just self-publish? And, it just all came together.
Interesting how the universe delivers again, all you like-minded people. How many copies did you print off
initially? Well, we did 5,000 copies. Then we got Scott's publishing in Perth to do it all. So, it was all done in Western Australia.
So how many copies did you sell quickly?
Well, because we weren't putting them in a shop, we were just selling them through the cafe. It did take a while, but we did get the first Temptation was reprinted, and that time. But by that stage, printing had changed because we really got 5,000 copies done because of the cost. Because there wasn't a great deal of difference to getting 3,000, 4,000. I thought, I may as well just get 5. But yeah, it did take a number of years. I think it was about 10 years, and then after that, I got the first Temptation reprinted.
The banana muffins were always huge as well. So I have very fond memories as a mum with the Natural Temptation cookbook.
And the beauty of it, like, because a lot of people said, if you're going to do a cookbook, people aren't going to come into the cafe. And I said, no. But what people used to do is that they used to look through the cookbook and then say, oh, God, I hope they're doing the, such and such today. Oh, because I've just read the recipe, so I know what's in it. So then they'd come and order that.
So the appetite.
So the cookbook. So it was really good doing the cookbook, and it was a good experience actually, to get everything in print.
So the hospitality industry is a tough game. So 32 years. What drove you? I mean, I know that you talk about your passions, about waste-free. Talk about your passions.
I think probably the waste-free thing happened later. It was more the vegetarianism and doing real food, to start with, to prove that there were plenty of things to eat besides meat, really, and, coming from that health food alternative background, that in the mid-90s when cholesterol was a really big thing, that was a saviour for us because we had a lot of meat eater people that would come in and just say, oh, my cholesterol's high, or my husband's cholesterol is high and I'm supposed to do a few meat-free meals, but I just haven't got a clue what to make, and your food is always tasty. So that was about the same time that the cookbook came out as well. So that brought us to a more mainstream audience that, it's not just hippie, weird,
Yeah, I was going to say, because in many ways we've spoken about this, it's almost like you were before your time, before it became much more of a priority for
popular,
people. Yeah.
And it wasn't until probably like after the year 2000, it was still the vegetarian aspect, but then it became a lot more allergy-free type, the gluten-free thing and dairy-free was becoming more sought after. And then somewhere along the line there was, plastics. We never were a cafe where people came in and, people didn't say, oh, what's your special? We weren't that type of cafe. We'd say, well, everything's quite special, You used to, never really liked to promote ourselves that we were vegetarian because that put you into a little box. Because we used to have some people come in and say, oh, but I'm not vegetarian. And I used to say, but you eat food, don't you? So we've got really nice food. So that whole marketing thing, and also I suppose we started getting a lot more competition. Then business became not so much fun because we weren't just getting in and doing, and people were coming and loving what we did. We had our 21st year celebration, and then my lease was coming up for renewal on the 22nd year. We were looking at our premises to buy, but nothing was for sale. So I looked at another one in Prinsep Street. And anyway, then the old church came up and we negotiated. They said that they would, if we came up with plans, they would renovate to how we wanted, as long as we took a long lease. So we had to take a 10-year lease. And I said, yeah, I'll take a 10-year lease.
And it certainly was created very much in that vibe of...
Yeah, so we ended up reusing, because we wanted it to be the same, so we then used a lot of our walls and windows and we created that look. But we had our mural, but we couldn't fit our tree in, so then that had to go out. That was a last minute teary evening when we put the tree on a dolly and we wheeled it across the road, and the husband just said, we're not going to be able to fit it in here. And I went, you're kidding? So we had to wheel it back. And that morning I just thought, I'm going to ring this guy out at the Australian Wood Gallery, John Ablett. And I said, do you want a lovely carved tree? So he said, "Oh, I can't afford to buy it." And he said, "I love that tree." And I said, "No, if you want to come and pick it up, I'm giving it to you." And so in return, he took some of our Tassie oak doors and he redid them so that we could use as our sliding doors. So he did that work for us. So.
Perfect. So you still retained a bit of
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So there the years go by, new location, fabulous location.
Yeah, it's good.
Staff coming and going. And at what point did you say enough's enough?
They all sort of talk about having an exit plan, and I just thought, exit plan. Oh, I'm going to do this until I'm 80 or something, and but I thought, I really should have an exit plan, but I'm not quite sure how to take myself away from it. Like, what would I do? I was really stressing at that time because I was in my 50s by then, and I still had lots of
old.
Yeah. So I was still quite energetic and thinking of new things to do. And my oldest sister, who's 10 years older than me, she said she retired at 64 or 65. And I just said, "You're crazy. Like, how could you just do nothing?" And she said, "Oh, you'll just know when the time comes, right. You will know." So so when did COVID hit? It was 2019 or 2020. I just put it on the market. I thought, well, there you go. I have nothing to sell at all. And COVID was such an interesting time because I never ever thought that when they said you're not going to be able to open, I thought that's never going to happen. And really within 2 weeks it had happened.
Is that how you actually felt, that you had nothing to sell?
Yeah.
That was it?
Well, because we thought that business was closing down, like the world was closing down. So, but then within 2 weeks, we'd quickly sort of worked out, okay, we could do takeaways, and some of the girls left because they were sort of saying something about there was a job seeker allowance. So it was at the end of January. So a couple of my girls were leaving to go to uni anyway. So I hadn't employed anyone else. So and a couple of the other older ladies just worked part-time. So they said, well, we'll be fine. But in the end, we just sort of had a skeleton staff. So we sort of ran it with 3 or 4 people. So and then by June, July, it was all back to normal, really.
The world just went insane through COVID, didn't
so
it?
It was just interesting. But then I think what was worse was that recovering out of COVID, when we were then back to normal and so busy, but we couldn't get staff. It just became tiring. It wasn't as much fun, even though we were busy, which was great. That was really good. It was just really the staffing that, and that's when I couldn't find a cook. So it was only then, So because a lot of people had left, it was the whole vaccination thing as well. People wanted to come and work, but I just said, well, you need to be vaccinated. And the type of people that would be good cooks in our place were the type of people that wouldn't get vaccinated. And then I thought, I think I'm getting ready to retire now, So I was, as my husband said to me one day, "Are you enjoying it?" He said, "You're not laughing as much as you used to." I said, "That's true. I'm not laughing because I said I'm enjoying it, but I'm not having as much fun." So I was in that enviable position. I had it valued. And after COVID, the guy said, "Oh, you should put it on the market for $300,000." And I just said, people won't go into the hospitality industry for that price. It's still risky. And we were still having to check people's validations and things like that. So, so I just put it on the market for 180, and some people were really interested, wanted to keep it exactly the same. And they offered me a really low price. And I just said, you couldn't even fit out a shop for that. I'm not going to give it away. So I was a little bit insulted. And looking back now, someone said, "Oh, you should have taken that offer." And I said, no, because those people would not have serviced my customers. If they only wanted to pay that much for it, what were they going to do to the menu? Were they going to compromise on other stuff? So I just said, no, my gut feeling was that if you're going to argue about money at this point, I just said, no, I'm not. I would rather close it down than to sell it to the wrong person, because I felt my customers might think I'd sold out. Yeah. I'd sold out. And, how do you like it when you see a place that was really good, then it gets sold and the next person runs it into the ground? And it's the person that buys it after that builds it back up. And I thought I couldn't bear to drive past that corner.
And that's your
and
legacy
see that.
you had spent decades.
Yeah, and I would have
creating and
and I would have
nurturing.
felt that my customers would have thought, oh, she just took the money and ran. And I thought,
Yeah,
no,
wow.
it was never about the money. It was about the ethics of the whole place. So
in a couple of sentences, which is difficult, I'm sure, in summing up though, your experience with your business, with the people that you met along the way in the journey.
yeah.
What are some of your takeaways from it all?
Well, I don't know what my life would have been like if I hadn't have fallen into natural temptation, because really it became my life, and it put me in the position to meet so many people, being behind the counter and being able to be that person behind the counter. As I said, I'm not a person that will go out and sort of socialise a lot. I really like to be doing something. So it was the perfect job for me. So my takeaway, I suppose, for people is to find something that you love to do, that it becomes not just a job, but it's your interest, it is your passion.
Do you have a favourite quote?
Yes. Now, I've written down a lot of quotes now. Am I going to remember them? But really, the crux of the whole thing is that you should make your own destiny, make your own opportunities as well. And if you make a few mistakes along the way, it doesn't matter. That's the only way that you're going to learn. I heard a 93-year-old man the other day on Landline said, show me a man that hasn't made a mistake and I'll show you a man that's never built anything.
Oh,
So, and I
so
thought,
true.
well, that is true. If you never go out and do things, you won't make mistakes, but you also won't learn anything. And you won't learn anything about the thing that you are doing or about yourself. So, yeah, go forth and conquer. Make a few mistakes along the way.
Oh, and
Yeah.
we love that. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for coming along. Now, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, then please consider subscribing and putting on the notifications so that you know when a new episode has come out.
and always remember,
Every day.
You are remarkable.